No, it's fine. The mic is here. We have 15 seconds anyway.
The 50 seconds have finished. Hello, everyone on other Block Chat with Denis Petrovcic and Makram Hani. Today is a Block Chat where we'll answer some questions where was supposed to answer on an AMA that we've done a few days ago. Not we've done. Let me explain we've properly. So we, the collective we, were booked for an AMA with a partner of ours on Discord. Now, for those who don't know, I have a special love to Discord, and it seems the relationship and the love is mutual. So not only was I not able to talk, but I was not able to hear. And I've just heard the first few seconds, and that's it. So it ended up that Dennis and Julia were the only ones on the AMA, which meant one, that people had more pleasant time without my voice. Two, I wasn't able to answer questions that were sent to me. Three, I wasn't able even to hear the questions. So now Dennis will run those questions, hopefully, or some of them, and we'll answer them. Again, on other block chat, the purpose behind block chat, guys, since we started, because I believe we all need to remind ourselves and everyone around us, why are we doing what we're doing? The purpose of block chat is for us to be informed and inform you, for us to understand better the relationship between the technology that we are using and developing in the world, and how can we impact the world. At the same time, hoping to educate everyone who needs that part of education, and we all need education every day, to hopefully get to a point where we get cash flow to blockchain and we get real estate cash flow to crypto. This is our purpose. Our purpose is to achieve a situation where everyone is able to own real estate, where real estate is an asset class that's more liquid, more transparent. Real estate is an asset class that is more perfect, more standardized, and where everyone has access to, or much more accessible. From here, I'll go to Dennis. Hello, Dennis.
Hey, hi everyone.
Did you enjoy the AMA?
Oh, it was great. It was really good. We tried you a couple of times to get you in. Unfortunately, and then I needed to step in on the real estate questions or real estate related questions which were really interesting. Well, hopefully I didn't disappoint. I was able to shed some light onto those who were asking. But I think kind of here today we can do and run some of those questions as well, right? Because people were asking certain things that I believe you, Makram, are the most equipped to do and to answer.
Okay, let's start. What's the first question?
Well, here the first question here, I believe, is like somebody was asking, if they could tokenize a real estate asset with an existing business that comes with it, like let's say a bowling alley. So I presume that there's a building where there's a bowling alley or a cinema theater there, and how tokenizing that the real estate asset could play out in that property or business relation.
Okay, so there's many businesses that own real estate. McDonald's probably is one of the biggest real estate businesses in the world. Yeah, and such businesses build and develop their growth around real estate, and actually some of their loyalty is around real estate as well. I'll give you an example to that. And if any one of you have looked at balance sheets of businesses that are publicly listed and traded, and where they need to disclose their assets, they revalue their assets every now and then, you would see some years and major years with no real return from the operations of the business, but mostly the return would be from the assets reevaluation, the assets that they're holding. And because those businesses hold the assets over a very long period of time, generally, the revaluation that takes place and impacts it positively rather than negatively, or it impacts it positively much more than negatively. Now, can we tokenize an asset where the major, or a business where the major part of that business is the real estate holding? So the biggest investment is in real estate and everything that supplements real estate to make that business operational, similar to a bowling alley. Yes, we can. Now, is that tokenization of real estate? That's not tokenization of real estate, because the business here is two parts: it's the operation and the real estate. Um, is it a smart way? Yeah, definitely. It's a smart way to own the asset, and it's a smart way to own the business. Can you separate them? Yes, you can. Can you join them? Definitely, you can. Obviously, you can. The approach to that would be, if you're tokenizing the whole thing, then you're not tokenizing real estate, you're tokenizing the business. If you want to tokenize the real estate in the business, then the real estate in the business can be tokenized the way we tokenize real estate today, and by tokenizing economic value. What do you see on that, Dennis? Does it make sense?
That's, I think it's like the same answer, or more or less in that direction that
That you've
I
given?
try to give on this particular question to the audience, the Obsidian Ama. And yes, again, even if there's a business that runs a bowling activity, or a tennis court, or whatever, right, or a cinema, the real estate asset has a correlation to that business, and there's revenues being generated by the real estate activity, just because it's real estate, right? You can have them separated, or they can be under the same kind of entity. But the beauty is that we can offer the tokenization just of that is attached to the actual real estate asset. It really depends on how it's structured below, right?
100%.
Yes.
Whenever you have a business that has real estate or that owns real estate, you are able at all times to tokenize the business, similar to how people today tokenize real estate. We always talk about it. People tokenizing company shares, or tokenizing real estate through tokenizing company shares. This way, you'll be exactly tokenizing company shares, and that's a company that has an operation and that owns real estate behind it, isn't it? So that's an ultimate use for that technology. That technology should not, or that method is not best fit to tokenize probably real estate only, is it, Dennis?
Absolutely,
We have our
absolutely.
views on that. So
Um, Maybe another thing that there was some discussion on this is property valuation, right?
Mhm.
And basically they were asking if how do you actually establish um, the fair value of the underlying real estate asset, right? That you are tokenizing. And there was a subsequent question about if we participate in that decision or not, etc. So I'd love to see what your
and
view here is.
is that question a follow-up on the first question, where a business holds real estate, or is it a separate question where
It's a
how do we
separate one.
value when we take it
It's
into Ocean Point, for example?
Yeah, it's a separate question. Is basically
Okay.
what it is. Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the easiest asset classes to evaluate or to value is real estate. Why? There are certain methods and standards that we use to value real estate. I'm not a real estate valuer. I'm not a certified RICS or equivalent valuer. However, I've been in real estate for a long time. I've lived valuations. I hopefully have impacted valuations and been impacted by valuations. And what I can tell you is, following the science of valuation, that is also an art, and that's why there is a very small margin of variation that is allowed within valuations. And I would advise anyone to go and look at the Red Book, which is the RICS published book that guides valuation. You can read through material about methods of valuation, regardless if it is comparables of what's sold and available, or looking at the cash flow and creating multiples of that. All of those are ways to value real estate. And I have my own formula to value my real estate whenever I'm buying it, and my formula is slightly more aggressive because remember, I look at it as an investor, as a buyer, as a purchaser. So I want to be always more conservative. So when I look at valuations in general, I look at valuation methods and I apply a discount rate, a certain discount rate, where valuations usually take into consideration risks and take into consideration geopolitics and take a general element of that, but do not take a specific consideration for such elements. Where when I'm looking at it to purchase real estate, I do. Now, when we value today, when we are looking at what we do at Blocksquare and what we're taking on at Ocean Point, you need to remember that a very big element of what we do is valuing property right. Some of the biggest scandals in the world have been REITs taking rigid valuations for property. Or beyond REITs, even companies, funds, hedge funds, does not matter. What we do is we look at valuation standards. We take international standards into consideration. Anyone who's trying to take a public offering through would need to submit a RICS or equivalent certified valuation. We have the head of risk, Daniel, and it's very important to look at that, guys, with the right view. How big are we as an organization, Dennis? How many people are we? And look at the management now. You don't need to go through every single person who impacts our organization. How many people are we in total?
It's 12 people as an organization right
12.
now. Yes.
Very good. So 12 people. How many? Forget about details of every single individual. Imagine that we have a head of risk, and that our head of risk is somebody who's very experienced. I've sat with him. Yeah, we've discussed plenty of times, but I sat with him and Mr. Dennis for 3, 4 days. Was it 3 days? Extensively. To limit that, we left him when he was approximately burnt out. Please, I want to go back to the hotel. So Daniel, our head of risk, is there to make sure that we look at risk the right way. Not only do we look at valuations, but we consider risks that are beyond valuations because we're looking at international real estate. So when we take on real estate, we look at that.
Makram, I'm not sure if it's just me or it's on your end, but I can't hear you anymore. It's like your voice, for me, it stopped right now.
Now,
Now it's okay. Yeah.
okay, perfect.
All right. I don't know what happened, but you just
You're
went
not on
silent.
Discord. That's that's strange. You're not on Discord. So
Exactly.
I hope
Yeah.
it was only you not hearing me. So Daniel have issued one of the most consistent, comprehensive reports on risk, on how do we take real estate on how do we understand real estate, on how do we take valuations on, and it's amazing. So we're an organization that cares much about risk. We're an organization, and the individuals involved here are putting so much time and so much effort to make sure that things are done the right way. Imagine we have an asset onboarding meeting that occupies 4 of us every week. We have every Tuesday, yeah, every Tuesday an asset onboarding meeting where we sit and we look at every single asset and we look at the risks attached to it and we look at the valuation and we look at the location as if we are purchasing this asset, where we're not. Yeah, we're just today we're taking this asset on, tokenizing 10% of it, 10,000 tokens, and staking it. So it's not yet even publicly offered. And there will be a much more vigorous process when we go publicly offered, isn't it? So, guys, this is how we take on real estate. We do take international standards and internationally certified evaluations. Post that, we go a step beyond, where we take the details of those valuations and we look at either discount rates. I do not believe that we will look beyond the discount rate for a premium anywhere. And we could take risk into consideration, concentration of portfolio concentration into consideration, customer concentration into consideration, and then we we take real estate on. So I believe that we're very well covered on that.
Maybe another one of the other questions that was posted was especially on the risk side, because you're mentioning risk here, and I think one of those questions was something along the line of, when you're tokenizing real estate, what preventive measures can be put in place to secure the position of investors, right? How is it possible for investors to really feel safe when they're investing through the purchase of tokens? And what are actually the main risks beyond valuation, right? So valuation is one thing, obviously. If you enter an investment at a too high price, there's a risk because the appreciation of that investment might never happen, because you bought something at a too high valuation. And people in crypto that are listening to us are probably familiar with buying the top, some of them, and then you need to wait out the investment to hopefully come back to the same levels sometimes. So how does that reflect in real estate, right? Not the valuation part, but the structuring of the real estate asset that we're tokenizing. What are the risks of somebody that is holding a real estate token?
Okay, so let's look at how do we own real estate in general. Today, guys, to own real estate, Dennis owns a property. I want to buy it from him. I pay Dennis in a property for the property, regardless of where I am in the world. I may need a solicitor, I may need a conveyancer, I may need a mortgage broker. I go at the end of the day to the notary or to the trustee office or to the land department. I do register my interest. My interest is registered on that property. A deed is issued, and at the same time, Dennis gets his money in a form of a manager's check or a secured method of payment. Cool. So I now have my property secured and confirmed, and Dennis has his money. Perfect. Now, let's say that me and 10 other friends of mine, you, are joining me to buy Dennis's property. So what we can do today is we can come in, we can either chip in each $10,000 to buy an asset from Dennis for $100,000, or we can go to a third party to arrange and organize this for us. Regardless who arranges it, we needed a structure. So the structure usually can be a company, an LLC that we all go on to become shareholders of, and it buys the asset. Or in some countries, we can go directly on the title, on the deed, as shareholders, and each of us holds 10%. The first process happens exactly the same way, and we end up with each holding a 10%. Now, let's put tokenization in the middle, because again, remember, look how simple it is. We're not doing anything strange here. We are just creating a digital representation for each share of ownership. So let's say there's 10 of us. And let's forget about Blocksquare's tokenization, where an asset is 100,000 tokens. Let's say an asset is 10 tokens, and each token represents 10% of ownership. Now, what happens is you hold a token, I hold a token, and every one of our other 8 friends holds a token. And what we do is we purchased those tokens, the money goes into that token, and that token owns the asset. Now, that token is a record of our ownership. So what we've done is the deed or the title usually is a register with a registrar, a land registry or a notary or a kind of public or private registry. Now, when we create a token and we link it to the asset, that registry is a public registry, is an immutable public registry, and that records our ownership. Now, here is where the risk comes, the link between that token and that asset. How does the economic value in that asset transfer to the token? So when there's a deed, remember pre-tokenization, there was that paper. The economic value is recorded on that paper in a private or public registry that is guarded by a government. Now, here we have a public or private registry. Here we have a public registry where through tokens you are recording economic value ownership. Now, who guards that relationship? It depends on the vehicle you use to transmit that economic value to the tokens. What are the options you have? Option number one, where similar to us, we transmit that value through a corporate resolution. An LLC or an SPV owns that property. A corporate resolution is issued to transmit those economic rights to the token. So if we have 10 tokens, each has a token, each has 10% of those economic rights. Now, how do we secure that? Because remember, there is at the end of the day a company here, and that company owns that asset. That company tomorrow morning can go and change the deed on that asset and sell that asset. And that's one of the risks. In many jurisdictions, we're able to put a lien, and that's where the certified partner comes into play. Remember, if you look at our system, it's decentralized, not only technologically decentralized, but also physically decentralized. There is a certified partner in every locality, in every region, in every country, hopefully in the future, in every city. Maybe we reach a time where it's in every town. There is a certified partner. That certified partner's job is to enact, or one of the certified partner's roles is to enact things like liens, local due diligence, supporting the network. So what we can do is we can register a lien against that property in many jurisdictions. Now, there is jurisdictions where you cannot register a lien. I'm in a jurisdiction where you cannot register a lien unless you are a financial institution. You can't come as a company that does anything and say, I have a lien over this property. Now, there is methods of securing that property. One of them is that the ownership of the company that holds that property, the SPV or the LLC, is transferred to the hands or to the ownership of the party issuing the tokens, and then that party is regulated. Now, is that ultimate? Not really. Ultimately, we will have very soon, hopefully, a legislation and a regulatory body, and hopefully that will go way beyond the country. It will become a region and then the globe, where we have a body, and that regulatory body regulates that and sets rules for how that is imposed and how the economic value is secured. But go back a step backwards. If you notice, what we're doing is a simple transmittal of the economic value from a property to a token, exactly how you used to transmit it from an economic value of a property to a deed. The same way. The only difference is that it's a digital representation. So it's not a physical paper, it's a digital representation. That's it. Simple, yeah? And that is how you eliminate risk, the risk of securing ownership, or one of the ways.
I
Dennis,
think,
was the
yeah, I think
question?
this was brilliant, brilliantly presented in my view. I was actually really carefully listening to everything you said, and it makes so much sense. And you mentioned here one thing is, putting a lien, right? And in many jurisdictions, and then you went on to, is that ultimate? It's obvious it's not. This is like how of doing real estate tokenization today with things we have at hand today, right? What can we do today without waiting for all the legislation to happen and be able to execute it, right? Now, is this an ideal tool to create big projects with thousands of beneficiaries or token holders on the other side? Maybe, right? Does that create like further requirements to have certain licenses in place, etc., to be able to do that? Probably yes. In most jurisdictions that's the case. And it's not the case in the jurisdictions that maybe are not mature enough to even have that as a product, perhaps. But when you come to these private deals, if we go a step back, 10 people, like you said, want to co-invest in something. I did some of those deals. It's called syndication in some country, like in the US, for instance. Um, in many jurisdictions, it's actually not that easy to do syndications because you have certain rules in place. Like in Slovenia, if you do it, I actually need to gather all the shareholders at the same time at the notary. Like maybe 5 people, that's something I can do. But getting 10, 15, maybe even 20 people in,
The office won't fit. It's not only a matter of timing.
it just doesn't go through. It's not just timing. It's like we need to book the whole day at the notary and the whole office, right? It's like it's not as simple. And maybe a notary might go towards doing business with you more, and then they're open to having like everybody come one by one. But usually that's not how this should be done, right? And that's the current regulation. Like they need to go a bit towards you to be able to facilitate that process. But do you see, just like I do, this being a very helpful tool when it comes to a certain size but below a certain threshold, right? Doing like a
At
couple
the time
million
being, we
deal
don't have
with 20, 30 beneficiaries.
at the time being, we don't have any other options. So this is what we're going for. It's not like what we're doing today is we want to stick to regulation. We're not people who want to do things that are irregulated or that create risks that are non-acceptable or illegal or scams. Or we're people who want to stick to regulation, but we want to move and act. So what we are tending to do is utilize the pieces of regulation that we have to build the car that we want to build. So we have a process. We want to enact this process. We're trying to create what could be considered today a compromise to the process, because is that ultimate? Remember, tokenization of real estate, guys, that route that we're going is towards utmost efficiency and transparency. Most of regulation today and what we stick to eliminates or diverges some of this efficiency and transparency. Why? Simple. You have a very simple method. What is the best electricity transmitting metal? Let's call it gold. I'm not sure if it is or not. So you have a thread of gold. However, and this is tokenization today, or titanium. I'm not sure if titanium even transmits electricity. Pardon me, guys. My wife will kill me. My wife is a chemistry teacher. So, um, what we'll here look at is this is the kind that tokenization is. And today, because of regulation, we need to cut the thread from here, the wire from here, and we need to put a bolt. And then we need to cut it again from here, and we need to put a kind of aluminum wire, because that's what is required. So are we maintaining exact efficiency? Not really. But is it end-to-end perfect? Not really. That's not ultimate. But what we're trying to do is we want to transmit through a wire of gold. Now, hopefully in the future, very soon, we're not talking in the future, 15, 20 years. We're very soon. Guys, we're every day, every single one of us puts efforts to enact something like that. And many others probably in the world are doing the same. So we're very close to that happening. One day, the regulator or a regulator will come up and say, you know what, guys, I understand. Why are you putting that aluminum part here? And we tell them because of regulation. And you tell them, so let's put regulation together where you don't need this aluminum part. And then the regulator will say, okay, but we removed the aluminum part for you. But why is there 2 bolts here? This limits. We say, exactly. Thank you. And they say, you know what? From now on, let's experiment with removing them. And you are incubated, guys, in a sandbox, in a experimental medium, for you to test those and for us to understand the repercussions of it. Remember, because regulators' job and duty is to protect the society, the community, the environment, economic environment around. Not all of them do that in a best way, but hopefully everyone has the intention to do so. So this is where ultimately we're going to, isn't it, Dennis? We're ultimately not
Yeah.
hoping, working towards that.
And then many might think, okay, I'll wait out until everything is straightened, right? Which is obviously, sure, anybody can have their own decision, right? But usually that's not how history, or the history proves us wrong in that approach. People who waited out for everything to be figured out, um, left those who figured it out and helped, were present along that route, were actually the winners in the end. Those
I
that
was
came later on, they're able to use it, but they become part of the user, not the drivers. Let's say.
As you know now, I'm chatting with my new acquaintance so often. Do you know who's
Mhm.
my new acquaintance?
Hmm.
Chat GPT. So I'm chatting with Chat GPT probably more than my son and wife for the past few weeks, and every day we have a conversation. By the way, if somebody let me tell you something. If somebody is able to download my conversations, I'm surely getting to be in trouble, going to be in trouble. So our conversations, and one of the conversations, something came up that blinked here. Look,
Okay.
today, what's happening to tokenization of
Okay.
assets is similar to what happened to the internet in the 90s, where the
Mhm.
internet was not being adopted and utilized by anyone or by many. And then people said that it is going to die. And just because it wasn't adopted by many and people said it's going to die, it did not die. Eventually, it became what guards all our life. I cannot imagine my life without ChatGPT, without internet today. And I'm sure you can't either. So imagine today people saying that tokenization of assets. Why? Okay. We are those few who are saying, no, it's not going to die. You can think that way, but just give it some time. And eventually it will turn around the same way the internet have turned around. Web 2.0 and Web 3.0 are animals of, and we talked about that before when we were with Pekka Kelka on a session, on a block chat session. You said something, Dennis, I believe, and then Pekka said something similar also, which is Web 2.0 is all about information. Web 3.0 is all about transacting, is all about transmitting value and transacting value. And if transacting information is this popular today, why would uh, the ultimate of that, transmitting not only information, transmitting what's behind information, the reason you transmit information ultimately is to create value. Today, Web 3.0 is transmitting value, and that's the core of it. And here, there's many people who will test with NFTs and metaverses, and sometimes I laugh. I laugh 200 times a day looking at someone who's manufacturing Mercedes in a metaverse. I'm saying, God, some people have so much money and so much time on their hands. And look, guys, those guys are needed because it's similar to somebody who sits all day creating jokes for us to laugh at the end of the day, unwind, and hopefully work next day in the morning. So there's people who are doing all sorts of stuff. There's fundamentals, however. We're touching on those fundamentals. Remember, what we're doing tokenizing real estate is we're getting the characteristics of real estate on chain. We're getting characteristics of real estate onto everyone who will become on chain. A few years ago, a partner of mine told me in a session, do you know anything about DeFi? And I said, no. He said, I want to give you those readings on how DeFi is impacting villages in rural areas in underdeveloped countries. I said, what? And he said, I'm giving you those readings. Go read them. You like to read, yeah? You read everything. So no, don't tell me now you don't want to spare half an hour or an hour to read those. And I went and read them. And I found, wow. So all of those microfinancing stuff, empowering if you know, if Dennis, if you want, if you somebody tells you, would you lead today $1 million of a program to improve the water supply in so and so country, or to support farmers in so and so village, would you do that? I don't believe so. To spend $1 million on that, probably should have 1 billion. However, if somebody tells you, would you like to invest $10 in loans that are very high risk to farmers in somewhere in the world who are planting this, and it may return you 20%, or you may lose the whole of it, would you invest $10?
Of course, even if it doesn't return anything.
You're a banker, you're a mini Rothschild. So that's exactly that's it. That's what it's all about, guys. And
Yeah, it's
by
about
tokenizing,
connecting the end and the source directly. This is basically
peer
what
to peer, exactly.
direct connections without all those layers, intermediaries, everybody making money off of something. Here we have technology that can really connect two parties directly as much as possible in a secure way. And even though there's these bolts and aluminium stuff in the perfect thread or at the moment, um, they the transaction or the deal is still secured but made way simpler than inviting 20, 30 people to the
To
notary
a
at the
notary.
same at the same time
To sit
in
in
the same
Dennis's
day.
car and go with him to the notary. So
Exactly. And it does still involve the notary. It's not like you're going around the notary. You can still involve the notary if you so choose. It's just you digitize it, and by digitizing, you create things much simpler. It's like, video meetings simplify meetings. It's like you need to drive less, you can meet people from all around the world, and you can still do business. It's like it's become a normal thing thanks to Corona. That's one of the things to COVID. That's one of the things that happened. Like everybody's normal. Even if you're in the same town, you do a video meeting now, right?
so let me explain
Uh,
Zoom. Can I explain Zoom to you? Let me explain
if
Zoom.
we
No,
have time,
yeah,
yes.
we're going to a board meeting in a minute, guys, so we need to skip very fast. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we had relatives. My aunt was, immigrated to the US. So there was no connection, and to connect to them through phone was very high cost. And we needed to go from a village to a village to find a phone anyway, or 3, 4 villages to find a phone. So what we did at that time is we recorded cassettes to each other. So we record a cassette, and then when somebody is traveling, they take the cassette with them and give it to them. Imagine how vigorous a process. Zoom is that cassette traveling faster. That's it. So if you
Yeah,
prefer conventional and traditional, um, what we're doing today is just a progressive manner or method of transmitting the same conventional. Look,
yeah.
this session is enjoyable, and I believe it should run much further. How about doing this next session, the coming session, also about continuing the same thing? Because I have questions in mind. I
Yeah,
was, because I couldn't listen to the AMA, although I
yeah.
was, removing Discord and then putting Discord again, but I did also something else at the same time. I started
Okay.
reading the questions, and I started reading the community chat, and I've read things that amazed me. I started researching after that. Somebody that said, you know what, we are decentralized. However, we still use something like um, a wallet like
MetaMask.
MetaMask, which is not fully decentralized. How? And I started researching, how is it not decentralized and why is it not decentralized. So I want answers from you on those. I found some answers,
Sure.
but I would love that we talk to everyone else, because if that's something I didn't know, I'm sure that many others didn't know. It's not like my knowledge is very high on that level, but what about doing the next session about the same subject, or continuing the same kind of
Sure.
discussion?
We can
Done?
do that. Perfect. Yeah.
Pleasure. Pleasure seeing you, Dennis. I miss you so much, my man. See you in 2 minutes again. Everyone, thank you for joining us on another Block Chat. Dennis Petrovcic, Makram Hani on Block